was a bricklayer. He had been one for 20 years. He woke up early, worked long hours, and went home tired. Every day was the same: lay bricks, mix cement, wipe sweat, repeat. His boss, Mr. Collins, never gave him big jobs. Jim didn't mind. He wasn't the fastest. He wasn't the strongest. He did what he was told and did it well, but that was all. One morning, Mr. Collins called the workers together. Got a big project coming up. A new wall around the mayor's house. I need someone to lead the team. Jim didn't listen. He knew who'd get it. Mark. Mark was young, strong, and always had something to say. Mr. Collins cleared his throat. Jim, you'll be in charge. Jim frowned. Me? Yes, you. Start tomorrow. Jim didn't ask why. He just nodded. That night, Jim told his wife, Laura. She smiled. That's great. Jim shrugged. I don't know. I've never led a team. Laura set down her cup. You've been laying bricks longer than anyone. That doesn't mean I can lead. Maybe it does. Jim didn't answer. He just stared at the table. The next morning, Jim showed up early. The team gathered. Mark crossed his arms. So, what's the plan, boss? Jim hesitated. He had never given orders. He had only followed them. He took a breath. We start with the foundation. I'll show you how to level it properly. Mark smirked. We know how to lay bricks, Jim. Jim nodded. I know, but let's do it right. They worked. Jim checked everything. He corrected mistakes, adjusted lines, and showed them tricks he had learned over the years. The others listened, even Mark. By the end of the week, the wall was halfway done. Mr. Collins visited. He ran his hand over the bricks. Looks good, real good. Jim nodded. Just doing my job. Mr. Collins looked at him. You ever thought about moving up, maybe managing more projects? Jim shook his head. Not really. Well, think about it. Jim went home and told Laura. She smiled. See? Jim didn't reply. The next day, it rained hard. The workers huddled under a tarp. Mark sighed. Guess we wait. Jim looked at the wall. He walked over and pressed his hand against it. Something's wrong. Mark frowned. What? Jim pointed. See that? The water's pooling at the base. The foundation might shift. Mark shook his head. It's just rain. Jim didn't argue. He grabbed a shovel and started digging a small trench. The others watched. Mark groaned. Come on, Jim. Jim kept digging. Water started draining. Mark watched. Then he grabbed a shovel. Fine. Soon, the others joined in. They dug until the water ran off properly. The next morning, the sun was out. Mr. Collins arrived. He walked around the site. Good work. Then he pointed. Look over there. They turned. The wall next door had collapsed. A team had built it last week. It hadn't been drained properly. The rain had washed away the foundation. Mr. Collins looked at Jim. You saved this project. Jim nodded slowly. Mark clapped him on the back. Not bad, boss. Jim just smiled. A few weeks later, the wall was done. It was the best work Jim had ever done. He stood back and looked at it. Mr. Collins walked up. You ever thought about starting your own business? Jim chuckled. Me? No. Mr. Collins shrugged. Maybe you should. That night, Jim told Laura. She smiled. See? Jim thought about it. Then he nodded. Maybe. A bricklayer only knows his worth when he steps back and looks at what he's built.